Hi, this is Irv Shapiro with the MakeWithTech channel, formerly the Dr. Vax channel. Just about a week ago, I did a video about how to use computer-aided design, CAD, for 3D printing. And in that video, I looked at about a dozen different programs. And I recommended 3 programs that I use a lot, and I explained why I chose those programs. One of the factors was that they were free for hobbyists. In fact, in the case of the 3 programs I recommended, they were free for everyone. And I explained that for someone using it for a hobby, spending as much money for a computer-aided design program as they spend on their 3D printer might be a bit of a stretch, might be difficult. And that if I was using a CAD program professionally, I would probably use Fusion 360. In the comments to every video I make about 3D printers, about slicers, about CAD programs, about electronics, someone always says, "Have you tried?" I love those comments because they help me learn new things, and this channel is all about learning together. So in the comments, a viewer asked, have I looked at Shapr3D? And I had looked at it, but about 3-4 years ago, maybe even a little longer when it first came out for the iPad. And Shapr3D initially was a program limited to the iPad to allow you to use CAD on a tablet. Now, I didn't have an Apple Pencil at the time, so I tried using it with my finger. And it was frustrating. I didn't like the experience. I didn't think it was very practical. But since a viewer recommended it, I thought I'd take another look. And wow, this program has come a long way. Shapr3D is a very usable program now on an iPad, but more importantly, for people like me that prefer to do their design primarily from a desktop or a laptop, it has both Mac and Windows editions. The Windows edition is quite new and not fully fleshed out, but the Mac edition is quite impressive. In this video, I'm going to take a look at Shapr3D, and I'm going to ask a very important question. Is it worth 4 cups of coffee a month? Because it'll cost you about 20 bucks a month if you want to use that versus, let's say, FreeCAD or Tinkercad or OpenScad, which are all completely free. So stay tuned and let's learn something together. I tried out Shapr3D on both my MacBook Pro, on my iMac, and on a Windows computer. But I tried it on a Windows computer both as a computer and as a tablet because I have a Surface Go, which is my travel computer. Now that might seem like a strange choice for a diehard Apple fanboy, which I probably would qualify as. But I really wanted something that I could use as a true computer with full versions of software. Specifically, I needed at the time to be able to use a full version of Chrome to work on this YouTube channel. I've shared with you before that when I look at a website, it tells me a lot about what the goals of a computer program are. And in this particular case, it's very clear that the goal of Shapr3D is to make CAD easier, to make computer design easier. When we go to their pricing page, you'll see that there is a free edition, but it's usable enough to try out the program, but you couldn't really use it day to day. If you're going to use it day to day, this is a program you're going to have to pay for. Now you could pay $20 a month on an annual contract, or basically $42 a month on an annual contract. The difference between the two is predominantly the ability to import and export in more formats. That means you could share your programs with more traditional CAD programs. You can do some of that in the standard edition. You can do more of that in the business edition. But there's one major difference. In the business edition, they add a drawing module. Well, what they mean by that is a module you can use to take your 3D plans and convert them to 2D drawings that you would give to someone else in a manufacturing setting. Now, let's open up the program. To install the program, you install it like you normally would on any of your computers. For the iPad and for Windows machines, it comes from the appropriate stores. For the Mac, interestingly enough, it comes directly from the website, and you install it using a standard Mac installation procedure. But as soon as you install it, you'll see there's something different about this program. Many programs have a Get Started button when you first start up the program. Shapr3D does this perhaps better than any I've ever seen, because it uses little videos to help you learn how to use the program. I'll show you just a couple clicks to get the idea, and then we'll go to using the program directly. So I'm going to click on Get Started and ask me if I'm using a trackpad or a mouse. A mouse.
Let's learn the basics. To move the camera, right-click and drag the mouse.
Now, after each little video plays, and that was an example, you can try the individual activities. Now, I'm going to exit the program, come back in, so we can show you how to use the program, give you an introduction to its use by actually modeling something. And then we'll talk about whether I'm willing to spend 4 cups of coffee at Starbucks each month, about 20 bucks or so, in order to use a paid program versus a free program. Okay, I'm back and I've learned something new, and that is that if you exit Shapr3D in the middle of the tutorial and you re-enter, it really wants you to continue. I couldn't find a way around that. I clicked through the tutorial. There may be a way around that. But then it left me off at this screen. Now, for some reason you're not at this screen, it's not going to matter because we're going to start at the home screen. To get to the home screen, click on the home, and you'll see there are 3 entries across the top. The entries are Discover, Design, and Learn. Discover will show you some of your recent designs, and it'll show you some very new tutorials and webinars. Designs will show you all of your designs, and Learn will show you tutorials, what they call workflows, which are really customer interviews, Stories, which are also customer testimonials, more or less. The manual, which comes up in a browser. And the ability to go to a discussion forum, which gives you recent information and is relatively active. Now, to get back to your designs, you click on Designs. And I'm going to click on this unnamed design, which was the one I was on when I left. Now, before I get started with anything else, let me show you some key features you need to know to even get started. You can open and close the sidebar with this button up here, and that will show you all of the objects, the bodies and sketches in your diagram. We'll look at that in a minute. If you have the business edition, you can create drawings from your parts. These are 2-dimensional plans. Those will be listed here. I do not have that edition. Over on the right-hand side, you'll see a navigation cube, which you can click on to change to different views. And if you double-click on that navigation view, it will take the origin and put it back in the center of your screen. If you click on this element here, you can switch. We're going to switch to millimeters. Why? Because we're designing a 3-dimensional part. We're designing a little box with a lid that I'm going to print on a 3D printer. And therefore, millimeters is the more natural unit of measure for most, not all, but for most 3D printers. The horseshoe next to it, the magnet, I guess is really what it is, will turn on or off snapping. We're going to leave it all on. And then I'm going to click in my general area to get out of that element. And then this next element is for cross sections. We're not going to use that today. I have a mouse that I'm using here. It has a scroll wheel. If I scroll on the scroll wheel, I can zoom in or out. If I press on the scroll wheel and drag, I can move things around. And if I hold the shift key down and use the right mouse button, I can take and rotate. Once again, I can always click on the corner of this cube to recenter everything. Now I want to sketch something on this plane. Remember, this is X, Y, and Z. We're going to sketch on this surface right here. So if Sketch is not active, you'll know it's not active because there's an icon here that says Sketch. I can click once here, then hit the space bar, and that will center that plane. It by default puts me in the line tool. I'm going to switch to the rectangle tool. And when drawing a rectangle, you can do it centered around a point, diagonal, or 3 points. We're going to say diagonal. I'm going to move my mouse so it hovers over the origin and click once. Do not click and hold. In this tool, you click once, and then going to drag out my rectangle, click once again. Now, I'm going to want to make this much bigger than will fit on the screen, so I'm going to zoom in a bit here, and then I'm going to click on this dimension here, and I can use my mouse or a pen or a pencil if I'm using something like the pen on my Surface Go or the pencil on the Apple iPad. But instead, I'm actually going to click C and then use the keypad. And I want to make this 150 millimeters wide. Now you'll see it's now too big to fit on the surface. So I can use my scroll bar to scroll back in, then press on the scroll wheel. I'm sorry, I said scroll bar, it should be scroll wheel, and center that again. Now I'm going to click on one of these sides and double click on the, and then click on the dimension, and I'm going to make this 80 tall. So I've now dimensioned this box. At various times you'll see that there are little pop-ups for little videos that it will play for you that will give you additional hints. Overall, so far, I'd say this user interface is the easiest I've used. It's very clean, it's easy to use, and they have lots of built-in help. Now I can also constrain my elements, so I want to make sure that this stays nice and square. So I can click on this individual edge and I can say, make that horizontal. I could click on this edge and say, make it vertical. And I can do that to the rest of my edges. And as simple as that, I've added constraints. Now, if I zoom in here, you'll see these little icons here, which indicate there's a constraint. That's very much like parametric modeling. Now, how do I center this around the origin? Because I want this to sort of stay in one place. There is no constraint that will make 2 points collinear or coincident. But if you take a point like this corner here and you just drag it to another point, when you see those red X's around it, let me drag that off and zoom in here so you'll be able to see that a little better. When you take and you drag it to the origin, see how it goes red? That means it's now connected. And you could then click on this little lock and that's not going to move now. So now if I try to change this, I can't change it in essence. In terms of parametric modeling, it would be called fully constrained. Why? Because I have dimensions on both axes, I have horizontal and vertical constraints, and it's locked to a point. Now, when I'm done with that, I can take and close this sketch, but I don't really see what I'm looking. I don't see here the option to make this three-dimensional. But if I double-click on the cube and go back into 3D view, and then click on a surface, I'll see I have a bunch of different things I can do. One of the things I can do is extrude, and I do that by pushing or pulling. So we're going to make this, let's say we're going to make this 60 high. And I've now created a box. Now that box is a body over here. If I hide the body, the sketch is still underneath. Now, if this was a parametric modeling system, I could change this sketch. So as an example, if I click on this once and then hit the space bar, it will center the sketch on the screen for me. I can change this 150, let's say, to 180. That looks good. Close the sketch. Double click on my navigation element to go back to 3D view. And now I'm going to unhide the body, and the body didn't change. That's because this is not a parametric modeling system. Sketches are more or less like templates used to create bodies, but once you create them, they can be used to create another body, but they don't live with the body. If I want to change this, I click on a surface and I manipulate it directly to pull it in and out. I don't use the sketch to manipulate it. So that's one of the differences between this and, let's say, Fusion 360 or FreeCAD that are parametric modeling programs. There are advantages and disadvantages to both, but that's a clear distinction. Okay, now I'm going to actually take and delete this body. Now for my design, I want there to be two sets of walls, an inner wall and an outer wall. What I mean by that in a minute. So I'm going to click on this sketch, but I'm not going to extrude it. I'm going to hit the space bar. Now you'll see when you first enter sketch, by default, line is selected. We don't want line, we want offset edge. Offset edge is a tool that will create another edge around the outside of a current sketch or element. We want it set to loop. That means we want to create it all the way around. So I'm going to click on this edge and then click on this box and put in 2 millimeters. Now I'm going to click outside of that area and you'll see we have an inner box line and an outer line. I want to do that one more time. Offset edge, click, 2 millimeters. And now we have 3 lines. So I'm going to go and close the sketch. Double click on my cube, which will take me to 3D view. Okay, so now I can take it and extrude the inner surface, this one here. I can extrude this wall. Let me zoom in a little to make it easier to see. I can extrude this wall or this wall. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a bottom to my box. Now there are a couple ways I could do this. I'm going to do it this way just to demonstrate extrusion a bit more. So I'm going to select this area. I'm going to hold shift and select this area, hold shift and select this area. So I've now selected 3 areas and I'm going to move that up and I'm going to click in this box here and make the bottom of this box 2 millimeters. Now that's great, but now I can't see the walls anymore. So how do I extrude the walls? Well, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to hide this body. Now I can see the underlying sketch. Now remember, the sketch is not attached to the object, but I can use it to do additional construction. Okay, now I'm going to zoom in a little bit, select this inner area here. I'm going to extrude it. I'm going to extrude it up, and let's make that 60 millimeters. Now, I want the inside to be taller than the outside so the lid can fit over the top. So I'm going to select this area, I'm going to extrude it up, and I'm going to make this 58 millimeters. Now when I zoom in and use my scroll wheel to move back to the center, we can see we have our box. We have the outside edge and the inside edge. And let's zoom in a little here and you can see it a little better. What happened to the bottom? Well, I hid that. So I'm going to unhide that. And now we can see we have the box fully formed the way we want it. Now, as I do other things with this box, it's going to be awkward if these pieces become disconnected. So I'm going to select all 3 of these, and I'm going to create a union. Done. So now I have the box as a single body. Now we're ready to create a lid. So we need to refresh our mind's eye of what the dimensions are here. So I'm going to take and go over to the box here and click on the eye to hide it. And then I'm going to click on one of these edges here. And we can see that the dimension is 150, but that dimension is to the inside. And remember, we added 2 and 2, so that would be 154, but there are 2 sides, so it'd be 158. And the other side was 80, so that would be 80 plus 4 times 2 is 88. So we need to make the lid 158 by 88. And we'll just take and center this on the screen. And I'm just going to create the lid over here next to it. So we need a rectangle. And we're going to make it, let's say 158 by, 158 by 88. So let's just get close, and then we'll click in here. So that's 158 by, and let's click on this one. We'll zoom in a little here so that we can get to that. By 88. And that's the outside dimension. So that's going to be the lip that comes down on the outside. The inside dimension is the 80 by 150. So likewise, we need to have 3 lines here to create the different extrusions. So we know how to do that because we've done that before. So I'm going to go to offset, make sure it's in loop mode. Let's go inside by -2, -2. Click out. Let's click this one. Make sure we're an offset edge. Go inside by -2, -2 again. And now we have the sketch we need for our lid. So let's actually take and create the lid. We're going to close the sketch, double click on the navigation icon on the cube. If we want, we can turn this on. Now I'm going to zoom in first to make it easier to select things. So I want to select this surface, hold shift down and select this surface and this surface, and we're going to extrude it up. Let's make the lid 2 millimeters thick. So that would fit over the top, fit over like this. But remember, we want it to come down around the outside so it snaps on there. So let's take and hide this body. And now we're going to take this little edge here and we're going to extrude it further than the actual interface. So we have to select that there, and we're going to extrude this 4 millimeters. So we have the inside extruded 2 and the outside extruded 4. Now we can turn this back on. Now it's a little bit hard to see, so I'm going to zoom in here and you can see the details now as I rotate it around, that we have a lip around the outside, and that lip is going to fit into this lip here. Now I'm going to click on the lid and I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. So it's in the proper orientation in order to sit on top here. Now I could just move it over there now with the move command, but there's an even more powerful way to do that. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to position so I can see the lip here. See this lip right here? I'm going to go to Transform, Align. I'm going to click on that lip right there. And then I'm going to hold Shift down and navigate up and click on that edge right there. I'm going to click Done. And if I move this over here now and rotate it around, we'll see our box is now covered. The lid is on the box. Now let's show you how you can see that that's really working. I'm going to turn the sketch off. We won't need it anymore. And move this over here a little bit, rotate it around. I'm going to click on the lid again. And I'm going to click on Move Rotate. So I want to take and move the rotation by dragging this little circle here to where the hinge would be. Now let me move the orientation a little bit so you can see this. And now if I rotate it, you can see that the box is actually precisely rotating on my lid right there. So let's click on the lid again. Ensure that the rotation point is snapped to right down there. And we can now open and close our box. So we've created a box with a lid that's properly aligned. Now in a program like FreeCAD, you'd have to use a extra workbench, which is an assembly workbench. The Assembly 2+ workbench works similar to what we just did here. But this was actually relatively easy to do as long as you change how you think about CAD. You don't remanipulate sketches. Now, how do I save this? Well, if I want to 3D print this, I just go to File, Export, 3D Print, Next. I'm going to export it as an STL. I'm going to give it a name, Box and Lid. I'm not going to include mesh bodies because I didn't import any mesh bodies, but I'm going to save each first level item as a separate STL file. That means I'll get a lid STL file and a box STL file. I go to Next, and now I can click on Export, click on Save, and I've now saved this model to my desktop. So what are my thoughts? If you come from a CAD background, a program like FreeCAD will be very intuitive to you. It will come naturally to you. And in fact, FreeCAD does things this program can't do. As an example, this program really doesn't support type. There's a workaround, but if I wanted to type a name on the outside of this box, it's a little tricky to do in this program. It's a little easier to do in, let's say, Fusion 360 or Tinkercad or FreeCAD. This program doesn't have today add-ons for sheet metal processing or for elaborate curves. You can do things with revolves and with lofts and with splines, but it's not as feature-rich as a program like Fusion 360 or FreeCAD. But it is remarkably easy to use. So my thought is that for many people, if they want to model a handful of things a month, you make the decision. But is it worth 20 bucks, which is maybe 4 cups of Starbucks coffee? Because my conclusion is it has met the goal of being the easiest computer-aided design program I've looked at in the last 3 years. That's not to say it doesn't have a learning curve, but it is a remarkable, beautiful, aesthetically pleasing piece of software. Well, folks, I hope this was useful. If you want to learn about a lot of other CAD programs, there are a whole bunch of videos on the channel, and there are links in the description to a playlist with all of those videos. Thanks so much for watching. If you learned something, give me a thumbs up. Recommend the channel to other people, subscribe to the channel, and go to forum.makewithtech.com if you want to discuss this and other videos. Have a great day, and let's continue to learn things together.